Roughly 20 people are injured by trains every year in southern Arizona. A handful die from those injuries, and that's not including suicides.
They didn't set out that day to die. They just made simple mistakes.
John Hurst has seen death 3 times on the tracks.
These are great big giant monsters, and they're very unforgiving.
Hurst and Henry Zappia, both retired Union Pacific engineers, think complacency is partly to blame.
There's no train today. There's no train tomorrow. The third day, you've already decided there's no train.
They may cross over railroad tracks numerous times and not even see a headlight. And then the one time that things are much closer and they think they have enough time, sometimes they don't.
4 people died on southern Arizona tracks in 2011 and 2 more in the first 10 months of 2012.
I don't know anybody that has had any years on in railroad service that hasn't had some incident. It's just, it comes with a job.
A job that takes its toll.
It brings back memories. It's, the circumstances are always different, but you never forget.
Michelle Williams lost her brother here on these tracks off Main between Speedway and St. Mary's 19 years ago. She thinks he was trying to beat the train.
My gentle giant, my great warrior, David thought he was invincible.
His life was gone in an instant. His family left with broken hearts and very little information.
There's always been a mystery on how exactly did this happen. Was he laying on the tracks? Was he running across the tracks? Was he quietly walking across the tracks and maybe just didn't hear the train or see the train?
Operation Lifesaver is an organization spreading awareness and teaching proper safety.
It's very hard to gauge the speed of how fast that train is approaching.
It's not really talked about, train accidents, very much. I think there's a stigma that they're tied to suicides, and that's not always the case. A lot of these deaths are accidents. They could have been prevented.
Nicole Semery, News 4 Tucson.
This year is kind of tied into the times, isn't it?
It is, absolutely. And you know, John, a lot of times we get wrapped up in asking for gifts and receiving gifts, and it's not all about that. But although those kids do have toys on their Christmas list, Santa says that's not all they're asking for.
I was going to ask him for an MP3 player and a tea set. Calico critters, a helicopter, Wii, TV. They're little animals that are hard inside and soft outside.
These are the requests that many kids have when they sit on Santa's lap. But some children aren't asking for things under the tree come Christmas morning.
A number of children this year, particularly asking for jobs for their parents, wishing that their mother and father were happier together maybe, or just a general feeling of happiness for their whole family.
Sometimes you can see the sadness on their faces, and sometimes they'll say, I don't want anything. I just want my family, and I just want to be happy, and I want us all to be happy.
Santa says it's a sign of the times.
You still get the occasional kid that comes in with the list as long as your arm is, you know, it's sort of, but for the most part, most children just ask for one.
Sometimes even the youngest of children can blow Mr. and Mrs. Claus away.
And we had a 2-year-old ask for an iPod. Do you know what it is? No, but I want one. I can barely talk and they want an iPod.
But sadly, the wishes that don't cost a penny are harder to fulfill.
You know, the elves are making all kinds of things at the North Pole, but in some cases the elves can't fit everything on the sleigh that they're asking for.
So as Santa hits the skies this Christmas Eve, he hopes that in his heavy load, there's a little bit of holiday cheer to bring smiles to many faces.
Merry Christmas, and we wish that you get all the things that you're asking for that will help make you happy, and that your mother and father are, you know, have jobs and have an income to provide those sort of things for whatever it is that you're looking for.
I hope you have a very, very magical Christmas. It's important.
And when I was talking to Mrs. Claus, she was saying that she just wishes for people. She loves to interact with people, and that's really, truly all we need is each other.
Yeah, and really a time when families come together and there's a lot of happiness and joy, but it's at this time of year with the job situation the way it is, it's kind of sad out there for some families.
It's very sad, and to see those kids feeling the same thing, but it's almost eye-opening to see that those children do understand what is going on.
Yeah. It affects them directly. Nicole, nice job. Thank you very much.
Brandon, every pole on this stretch of road now has a sign like this one posted on it. It's just one more way to let everyone know to keep an eye out for Isabelle Celis. Shoes, wheels, or a stroller. The method doesn't matter. It's the goal that counts.
Let's put one on this pole.
Yeah, all the poles. The wood poles are going to be a little harder.
Paper your street. Two groups set out with one purpose, to get Isabelle's face on every pole possible.
You have to keep putting her face out there, and if it's 2 to 3 hours out of our lives, that's nothing.
The target, 22nd Street.
If it was someone that was in this area that had been watching her at the ballpark, we want to make sure that we have her face specifically in this area.
So from pole to pole and even bus stops, volunteers walk with flyers in hand, taping each one in hopes that someone will recognize this little girl.
Just trying to get her face out so everybody can see it, so if by chance somebody's in a grocery store, they'll be like, hey, so I know her.
But resources are running thin as we enter into week 3 of the search.
The volunteer station here is running out, so we're going to work on with what we have, and hopefully more people will come and make donations so we can get more flyers printed.
Each flyer is different, and now they're trying neon green.
Just the color of paper, we're hoping it just pops a little bit more where people pay attention. It gets their eyes to it a little closer.
And getting them one step closer to bringing Isa home.
2 weeks is a very small amount of time when you're thinking of a 6-year-old child, a beautiful little girl that did not deserve what has happened to her. She needs to be home.
And volunteers are encouraging the community to print your own signs and post them in your neighborhood. If you want to pick some up, you can get them at the volunteer tent on Broadway and Craycroft. Reporting live on the east side, Nicole Semery, News 4 Tucson. I spent 2 days riding along with a Department of Public Safety officer and learned that though the workload hasn't increased, what's really weighing on some officers is the perception people have of them since this highly controversial law passed.
Could I see your license registration insurance, please? Could I see your license registration insurance, please? Education, not deportation. Hi, I'm Officer Fito at the Highway Patrol. Could I see your license registration insurance, please?
License, registration, and proof of insurance. The 3 things every officer demands on a routine traffic stop. Since 1070 went into effect in June, Officer Figueroa says protocol hasn't changed.
Like everybody has to, like I have to when I'm out driving my own car, I have to provide license, registration, and insurance.
It's when that can't be provided there's an issue. Figueroa hasn't had any stops involving illegals since the law went into effect, but if he did, he says it wouldn't be a result of racial profiling.
10-4. Since SB 1070 came out, I have had, in the most recent time, one individual that claimed, you stopped me because I was Mexican kind of deal.
For Figueroa, it's the resistance that's been the hardest thing. It doesn't matter that the officer himself is Hispanic.
I think they're focusing in on the patch and the uniform itself.
He's been trying to prove that drivers aren't being targeted based on what they or their car look like. During our ride along, Officer Figueroa stopped to help a family. After he got them safely on their way, I asked why he didn't get any information.
I have no need to go further there other than that. There's nothing illegal that I could see that was going on other than somebody off the side of the road trying to change a flat tire with his family.
Officer Figueroa may not racially profile, but groups like Derechos Humanos is saying it's getting complaint calls, and this is where those calls come in.
Hi, this is Kat from Derechos Humanos. I got your message a little while ago. Bye. We get calls on a weekly basis that this happens. Some members of our organization get calls almost on a daily basis from people.
The common thread is fear.
The fact that people are feeling afraid or feeling unsure or not feeling comfortable around law enforcement is one of the biggest problems of laws like SB 1070.
Rodriguez tells people to be prepared to provide a license from here or Mexico, your insurance and registration.
Beyond that, who they are and how they live their lives is not something that I, as a citizen of the United States, really care about.
But the department says that if they supply those 3 things, then they move along. They don't ask if they're a citizen.
That's not true.
Okay.
We have consistently had people who have provided their license, registration, and proof of insurance and have been asked additional questions.
Not on Figueroa's watch.
Hi, I'm Officer Figueroa at the Highway Patrol. Could I see your license, registration, insurance, please? This officer made the stop. He was professional. This is what I did wrong. He gave me the documentation, then we moved on about our business.
I requested the total number of complaints against DPS in relation to SB 1070. The department says there was one which they investigated and found to be invalid. Nicole Semery, News 4 Tucson.
Nicole Semery now with the News 4 Tucson investigation, new at 5.
So we have the streetcar line built, and we have businesses all up and down the streetcar line waiting for the customers to be dropped off at their front door, and we don't have the cars.
Ward 6 Councilmember Steve Kozachik is infuriated by what he calls bad business by the city of Tucson. He's even more upset because he says the city hasn't tried to force the streetcar manufacturer to pay extra for missing their delivery deadlines. But the city says it's working on it.
Once they miss their contractual milestone, then we gave notice that liquidated damages would be assessed. And we've already talked to them as well as notified them by mail.
Kozachik says that's no more than a threat. It has no legal teeth.
Talk is good, but talk is cheap. Get the LDs in place and get their attention by hitting their pocketbook, and maybe that'll work.
So I called the company. Has the city contacted you about liquidated damages, or have they not?
That would be a question that I would need to research and find out.
After multiple calls and emails, Hotchkin never gave me a straight answer, but sent this statement. United Streetcar is working actively with the city of Tucson on a range of issues under our contract, including the timing of delivery. The contract states damages would be $250 per day for the first 90 days, $1,200 through the 240th day, and then $1,800 until delivery. This means for the expected 5-month delay of only the first car, the city could be due almost $100,000.
It gets serious, but you have to start that meter ticking. Because in order to get to the $1,500 a day, you got to go through the first iteration.
But here, too, the city has an answer, saying it's waiting for each car to arrive before figuring out how much Oregon Iron Works should pay out for missing the delivery date. And that pushes payment off until next year.
We can talk dates all we want, but I'm not buying any of it until I see some little thing rolling up and down those tracks.
Even if the cars aren't here, the city says the tracks should be ready on time. That's by June. If you have a story for News 4 Tucson investigators, we'd like to hear from you. Just email us at investigators@kvoa.com. Nicole Semery, News 4 Tucson.